Good evening, everyone. My name is Ross Anderson, and I work at Metrolinx. I'm on the community engagement team, and I'm joined here this evening by my colleagues to speak a bit about the construction for the Ontario Line subway happening at the future Queen Spadina station. This evening, we'll be providing information at the next phase of construction coming to Queen Spadina intersection, known as excavation. This is the site where the future Ontario Line subway will exist at the southwest corner of Queen Spadina and the northeast corner again at Queen Spadina. Next slide, please. But before we begin, let us take a moment to acknowledge that we are on lands that have been and continue to be home to many Indigenous peoples, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat peoples. We are all treaty people. Many of us have come here as settlers, as immigrants, or involuntarily as part of the transatlantic slave trade in this generation or in generations past. We acknowledge the historic and continued impacts of colonization, and we need to work towards meaningful reconciliation with the original caretakers of this land. We acknowledge that Metrolinx operates on territories and lands covered by many treaties that affirm and value the rights of Indigenous communities, nations, and peoples. We understand the importance of working towards reconciliation with the original caretakers of this land. At Metrolinx, we will conduct business in a manner that is built on a foundation of trust, respect, and collaboration. Next slide, please. Well, it's my pleasure to be the moderator for this evening's meeting. And one of my goals for this evening is to keep this event on time and to have all of your questions answered to the best of our abilities. Again, my name is Ross Anderson. I'm a senior advisor for the community engagement team on the Ontario Line project at Metrolinx. A couple others on the screen here. We have James Francis. James is a senior manager for subway sponsors at Metrolinx. Hi, James. Sergio,
Hi.
a station manager at Queen Spadina with Ontario Transit Group, the constructor building the Ontario Line subway in the southern alignment and stations. Hi, Sergio. And lastly, Aga. She is the environmental manager for the Ontario Transit Group as well. This evening, you'll hear from all of us about the Ontario Line Queen Spadina station. Next slide, please. We have prepared an agenda for this evening's meeting, beginning with a bit of an overview on what the Ontario Line is. Many of you have heard of it, but we do want to share more information about what the project is all about. We're going to share a construction look ahead and what is expected to come to the Queen Spadina intersection and how we can reduce impacts. And then we will leave ample time toward the end of the meeting for a question and answer period. On the right of the screen, we do have some meeting guidelines to help create a respectful space for both the panelists and you, the participants. We do want to answer as many questions as possible, so please keep your questions brief. There will be an opportunity to ask more than one question if time does allow. And we do have dedicated time for your questions. So note them down and we will get to them as soon as we're able. Today's meeting will be focused primarily on construction at Queen Spadina Station, including excavation. But if you do have questions about other topics, we're happy to answer them here. And if we can't, we're always happy to answer them at another day once you get in contact with myself. Next, please. Next slide, please. Well, this evening's meeting is being recorded and it will be made available on the Metrolinx YouTube page. There is a closed caption feature available that can be enabled on your device. What you see here is a way that you can enter the meeting if you are having trouble entering it through a laptop or a computer. If you call this number on your screen right here, you'll be able to get into the meeting by entering the code you see right under the telephone number here. Next slide, please. Um, Before we started this meeting this evening, there was an opportunity for the public to give questions to the Ontario Line team through a feature called Slido. And you can continue to use this feature to ask questions. All you have to do is scan this barcode with a smartphone device, or you can go to the website and enter the code you see at the bottom of the screen here. Once you answer your question, I have a colleague, Bradley, will be able to see your question and will be able to answer it during the question and answer period. If you'll have an opportunity to unmute your microphone and ask your question to a project expert as well, or you'll also have an opportunity to enter your question into the chat. Next slide, please. Now, about the Ontario Line. Next slide, please. So the Ontario Line is a new rapid transit project. I know many of you have heard about it, and it will run from Exhibition up toward what we currently know as the Science Center. Today we'll be focusing on Queen Spadina Station, but there's several other stations in the vicinity of Queen Spadina where construction has already occurred as well, just like at Exhibition, King Bathurst, Osgoode, Queen, Moss Park, and so on and so forth. The Ontario Line is a really important project because the intention with the Ontario Line is to not only make transit easier and jobs more accessible, but to bring relief to the existing transit infrastructure in the downtown core. Whether you drive or you take a streetcar or you take a TTC subway, the Ontario Line is meant to be a part of that integrated transit network to work seamlessly with other transit options in the area. For example, we do have Osgoode and Queen stations. Those are stations that already exist as TTC subways, Line 1, as you may know it. The Ontario Line will intersect with those stations, meaning you can get off the Ontario Line once built and get onto the Line 1 to go elsewhere in the city, for example, Union Station. Exhibition Station as well. That is also going to be known as a transit intersect, if you will, where you can take the GO train and get off if you're taking Lakeshore West Line and hop on the Ontario Line quite easily without having to go all the way downtown. This is one of the benefits that the Ontario Line will bring to the city. Of course, Pape up here in the north, as you can see in the blue, where you can get off the subway at Pape and hop on to Line 2 and go where you need, and as well the Science Center, where the future Eglinton LRT will exist, where you can get around the city much more easily. There are a lot of benefits for the Ontario Line, and we will continue to discuss them, but I'm going to ask the person sharing the screen to go to the next slide, please. So OTG, you'll hear that name a lot this evening, and OTG is an acronym for Ontario Transit Group. Ontario Transit Group is a joint venture between a couple companies, Ferrovial Construction and Vinci Construction, but essentially they're the folks who are designing and building what we know as the southern portion of the Ontario Line subway, Southern Civil in other words. The southern portion is the highlighted portion you see in this graphic here. The southern portion will consist of one above ground station to be integrated with the GO Transit station. That's the Exhibition station that will be rebuilt, and it will serve as a GO station and the Ontario Line station. The two underground stations that I had just mentioned, where you'll intersect with Osgoode and Queen Subway Station, but there'll also be 4 additional stations, again, in the southern alignment, that will live at King Bathurst, Moss Park, Corktown, and then the station we're discussing tonight, Queen Spadina. Overall, the southern portion tunnel will be 6 kilometers long, and associated tunneling works from Exhibition to the Donyard portal. A portal is where the subway is going to enter the earth and exit the earth. Next slide, please. Well, let's talk a little bit about Queen Spadina Station. So I'd mentioned earlier, there are 2 stations at Queen Spadina. Well, we call them head houses. This is where you enter the station. Essentially, it'll be at the northwest, southwest corner of Queen Spadina, and then there will be one at the northeast corner of Queen Spadina. The Queen Spadina station is really interesting because the heritage facade is being protected at the northeast corner of Queen Spadina. You might have noticed a big wall freestanding where you walk by on the north part of Queen Street. Well, that wall will stay there throughout construction, and the intention is to integrate that wall with the design back into the station. Queen Spadina is not the only area that we're going to be doing this. It's happening as well at Osgoode, and it's happening at King Station. This is one of the ways the Ontario Line team and Metrolinx team is working to preserve some of that history and integrating it with modern subway technology. As I'd mentioned here, there's 2 new station buildings that will be constructed, and the current plans envision maintaining streetcar services through these areas through the duration of the project. One thing that's really important to note is Metrolinx and the Ontario Line team work very closely with TTC. And we are aware that, streetcar service sometimes can be disrupted. And we do know the reality of what's happening on Spadina, where there are buses currently serving as streetcars up until the end of the year. This isn't going to necessarily affect the project, but these are some of the conversations happening behind the scenes to make sure that there is a seamless workflow between so many different projects happening in the city at once, whether it's the TTC Transit project or if there's other condos being built or if there's other parades in the area. Everybody has to work together to some degree to make sure the city can continue to function as a city. Next slide, please. All right. I'm going to hand it over to one of my colleagues. Thank you so much, Sergio. I believe this one is for you from OTG. So take it away, Sergio.
I will take it from here. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sergio Gijón, working for Ontario Transit Group as the construction station manager for Queen Spadina Station. We can go to the next slide, please. So first thing, I will provide a high-level introduction about the activities that are currently in progress and activities that are coming in the next few months. So during the spring and early summer, we will complete the piling works. Piling works are constructed to provide a safe infrastructure to proceed with the next activity, that is the shaft excavation. We have been doing piling since February, and we are expecting to have this activity completed on the southwest corner in July 2024. Right after the piling works, we will complete the installation of the hoarding in both entrances, and then we will proceed with installation of the signage. Those signs in phase one will provide, so will be related to marketing regarding Metrolinx and the Ontario Line project. And we are also exploring beautification opportunities for the sites with some artworks and future renderings about the project. Starting in July, few days from now, we will start the excavation of the northeast corner, northeast station. This activity will start in July and will continue up to the fall of 2025. This activity for excavation will include not only the excavation of the shaft, but also the excavation of the station below Queen Street. So we maintain the estimated station substantial completion date for this project in 2030. This includes not only Queen Spadina Station, but also the 7 stations that are in Ontario Line South and the tunnel. We can go to the next slide, please. So this picture that you can see in the presentation was taken a couple of days ago, this week, July 2nd. On this view, you are able to see the facade that has been retained in place. This facade will be integrated in the future station building. And on this picture, we can see that all the piles has been completed inside of the station footprint. And we are working right now in temporary works to start the next activity, the excavation of the shaft. We can go to the next slide, please. Okay, next slide. I will speak now about the excavation. So as Ross has explained before, this station has 2 main entrances. They are 2 what we call shaft entrances. Those shafts are going from the street level and 40 meters down the street level in order to connect the station with the tunnel. The tunnel goes from the exhibition portal to Core Town, 40 meters below the street level. So right now we have completed the support of excavation, and we will mobilize all of our equipment to start the excavation. The first 80 meters, we will see clays and sand, so soft materials. Below 18 meters, we will find the rock that is part of the bedrock for this area. Okay, as we go down in the excavation of the shaft, we will be installing some steel structures similar to the ones that you can see in the picture. This will serve as support, additional support for the piles that are already in place. Those structures working as a system will avoid any damage on the structures that are around, or on the buildings or the street or other infrastructures such as the TDC streetcars or pathways, everything. We can go to the next slide, please. So the excavation schedule for Queen Spadina, as I mentioned before, we are planning to start in the northeast corner in July 2024. We'll arrive to the level of the cavern by the end of the year, and then we will start the excavation of the cavern in early 2025 up to the end of 2025, late fall 2025. The expected hours of work for these sites are 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. working into shifts. We will have some occasional overnight work and Saturday shift during the day. This will happen in both entrances, north and south. We are anticipating to start excavation on the south by late August, and from this side, from the south, we will only excavate the south. We will not do any excavation of the station from that point. Okay, we can go to the next slide. What you will see around the construction site during these activities, or on the coming weeks, you will see that all the drilling machines that we had on site will be demobilized as we complete the piling works. And we will see we will deliver some excavation equipment. Once the excavation starts, we will need to load the material in trucks. So we will have trucks entering and exiting the site on a daily basis in order to haul all this excavated material to the approved dump sites. And in order to facilitate the entrance for all these trucks, we will have several traffic control persons monitoring and controlling the pedestrian crossings and also the lanes in Queen Street and Spadina Avenue. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So this is this rendering that you can see in the presentation is an overview of the northeast corner. This is what we are gonna see inside of the heritage facade that we have explained before. So we will need to excavate the first 2 levels, 2 meters, and then install the struts and wailers. That is the steel structure that I have mentioned before, that is working in conjunction with the support of excavation piles to be able to proceed with the excavation of the following levels. So as we can see here, the excavation teams will excavate sequentially in lifts, more or less 3 meters every lift. And as they go down, they will proceed with installation of the steel structures or rock anchors once we achieve the rock level. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so on this slide, you will see how the site will look like as we go down. So we will have two levels of steel structure on the soil level, so the first 80 meters. And as we go down, we will proceed with the support of the rock with rock anchors and shotcrete. This full system will prevent from any damage to the adjacent structures or any settlement on the road or a streetcar or buildings. We can go to the next slide. So this is a list of materials that you will see on the project on the coming weeks. So we will have multiple excavators. The plan is to have 2-3 excavators on the subs. There will be one in the surface. We will see dump trucks entering and exiting the site. Those trucks will be loaded with excavators, and they are hauling this material off the site to the approved dump site facilities. Loaders are used also to load trucks, and from time to time we will see cranes to be able to put the equipment inside of the shop. We can go to the next slide. Okay, we can talk now about how we are planning to reduce impacts to the community. We can go to the next. So talking about the access points and lane affections that we are going to have here. So about the northeast corner of Queen and Espadina, our plan is to have the trucks entering from Espadina northbound. They will access the site and they will exit through Bulwer Street. Okay, and then from there they will be directed to the main roads in order to haul off all this material from the site. On the southwest corner, the trucks will enter from Queen Street. They will be loaded on the site and they will exit Espadina Avenue going south. We will maintain all the sidewalks open and accessible. We will have a parking lane closure on the northeast corner. This parking lane closure is currently closed. And I think we are going to talk about the lane closures in the next slide. I think, yeah, I have mentioned all the traffic routes. We can go to the next slide. So all the sidewalks and bike lanes will remain open. So pedestrians will continue to use sidewalks along the work zone. For any particular specific activity that we may require a temporary closure of the sidewalk, we will facilitate pedestrian access at all times using flaggers and alternative pedestrian routes. The parking lane on Espadina Avenue will be closed. It's currently closed since we started the project, and we will maintain this closed to facilitate the access of the trucks and also to avoid any damage to the vehicles that could park on that area. The curb lane on Queen Street West eastbound will be closed daily to facilitate the access of the trucks to the southwest entrance. And then we will maintain all the lanes closed with the exception that I have mentioned before. Queen Street westbound will maintain the 2 lanes that currently are in place. Espadina Avenue, no traffic restrictions. Graffiti Alley will maintain open, and Bulwer Street will be accessible. We don't expect any impacts to the traffic, to the public transit. So TTC streetcar in Queen, Street West, and Spadina will continue working as it is right now. And just a reminder for the member of the public to be mindful and to follow the direction of the flagging persons that will be working on the main entrance. It's very important to follow these instructions. They will ask the people to stop when a truck is entering and exiting the site. And it's very important to follow these instructions to avoid any danger to the public. We can go to the next slide. Okay. I think I will pass this to Aga, our environmental manager. She will speak about what are the measures that we have in place to minimize noise and air quality disruptions. Aga?
Thank you, Sergio. Yeah, so I'm going to discuss the impacts we are expecting during our excavation works. Let's start with air quality. And we may expect some dust coming from excavations, and we have mitigation in place to keep dust to minimum, such as dust suppression, most common. For minimizing noise, we have site hoarding installed. We also have one-way track system to avoid backing alarms. For any possible mud trucking from the site, we will use street sweepers on a regular basis. We tend and we already installed in both at both sites mud mats. You can see one of our mud mats here. They are really good in getting most of mud of truck wheels and provided additional mitigation to using street sweepers. And we also propose a drainage system in place to assure our site water is gathered and the runoff is minimized. Next slide, please. In terms of noise coming from the excavations, we are monitoring our noise levels live. We have readings coming to our environmental team. We are able to read. We are able to discuss them with our site teams. Same for vibration monitoring. And we, as mentioned before, we provided hoarding as a quite effective mitigation measure for reducing noise. Next slide, please. Again, as mentioned, you saw one type of mat on the slide before. You can see another type, the yellow one. Obviously, we are trialing several different options just to provide really effective solution and minimize our impact to community and into to the city roads. And again, you can see here how we are using dust suppression. So in this case, you can see piling operation here, and there is water spread at the auger. We are proposing exactly the same solution during the excavation to minimize dust to the local community. And next slide, please.
All
I
right.
think that's it.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Aga, and thank you so much, Sergio, and thank you everybody for listening to that. There's a lot of information that was just covered, and to briefly recap, we discussed three major points, one of which is the next phase of construction, excavation, which will be happening later this summer and continuing into fall 2025 at both sites. The next point that we covered was maintaining traffic flow by having a one-way in, one-way out system for the trucks and integrating with the current traffic flow at Queen Street and Spadina Street, and reducing dust and other mitigations like noise. The difference between the piling and excavation is that as the excavation goes deeper into the ground, the dust will be a lot less loose and the soil will be more solid. So we do know that there is dust that is caused from construction, and we are doing what we can to address the dust, like using mud mats or using water to settle that dust. Next slide, please. Well, we're at this point in the meeting, about halfway through, where we can begin our question and answer discussion. I'm going to ask my colleague Bradley. Bradley, could you please enable the chat so people can type their questions into the chat function? And folks, if you'd like to ask a question, you're able to raise your hand. If we can go to the next slide, please, and follow the instructions on the screen here to raise your hand. You'll have to unmute your microphone after your hand is raised. So I will enable your microphone. I will say you're ready to speak, and then we'll unmute yourself. So I do see a hand that's raised. The chat should be enabled right now. Bradley, if you're able to just let us know when the chat is enabled. I see it has been turned on. Thank you. So Alan has a question for us. So Alan, I'm going to enable your microphone. And Alan, go ahead and enable your microphone and ask your question.
Hey, Ross. My question is regarding during the construction phase, during the excavation, dust to the neighboring businesses as well as residential. In my experience of construction close to businesses such as restaurant, where we have a lot of HVAC equipment, from exhaust, makeup, air, ACs, there quite often is additional cleaning that would need to be done to clean the coils, replace for additional filters. Would there be a process in place for the business to reclaim the additional expenses that are incurred due to the need to clean and service our equipment more? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and just to recap, we're asking about equipment or storefronts that might get dirty caused from the construction and the dust experienced at Queen Spadina. And if you have to clean some of that stuff, you're asking how to recoup some of those expenses or whether Metrolinx would pay for that?
Yep, like things such as, filters or additional cleaning.
Filters, air purifiers, I see. Can we go to the dust slide, please? Whoever's sharing their screen. And in the meantime, I'll ask James Francis maybe to speak a bit about Alan's question. James, so Alan's asking a bit about air purifiers if necessary, or cleaning some storefronts, for example.
Not air purifiers, but things such as
filters?
we have a lot of rooftop equipment. So there are rooftop equipment such as AC equipment, such as heating equipment, such as makeup, air, exhaust. They tend to be rather dust sensitive just because the filters will get clogged up with dust, so that will require more frequent replacement of the filters, as well as any rooftop unit, the AC, you will need to clean them more often just because once the dust clogs up the AC equipment, they do become less effective. So nearby constructions, you do need to service that equipment a bit more regularly just to maintain the work in an efficient. So it's not purifier from indoor, it's more about making sure the equipment is in a good state of operation.
Great, thanks for the question. And I think in terms of this, as Aga was presenting, our first approach here is to minimize the dust generated on site. So I think this is a a good image of dust suppression used during piling. And as Aga mentioned, we'll be looking to continue dust suppression activities through the remainder of construction with applying water and other dust suppressants as needed. Use of the mud mats on the site, which help to get the dirt off of the construction vehicles as they're leaving the site, so that they're not tracking onto nearby roadways and drying and then getting picked up in the air and then becoming dust that does travel through the neighborhood. So our main focus really is on managing the dust that's produced on site. And to complement that, we also do monitor the dust that's coming off of our construction sites to help us adapt as needed and ramp up those mitigation measures like the dust suppression, like the mud mats, like the street sweeping and the cleaning. And so we are really focused on maintaining as clean as possible our construction site and really working to reduce any impacts off of our construction site.
Thanks for that, James. And Alan, if there's a specific situation, we're happy to talk to you about this more at another meeting if there's something in mind. But yeah, we're happy to talk more about this if there's something you're particularly concerned about. There's several other hands raised, and I'm going to give Soon an opportunity to ask their question. So Soon, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. I have two questions. Number one is you see the Ontario line from the subway line is from the exhibition center to science center, right?
Yes.
And underneath, they go through all the building, street, or how does the line go through? It will go through under our building too? That's the one.
What building are you?
Yeah, I mean the Morgan, right? The Richmond here, Spadina, this one. So my one is in our building is the Spadina, right? On Spadina, Richmond, Morgan, right? Behind is this construction area, right? I'm just wondering the subway line underneath, right? It will go to our building underneath there, or how deep is it? How's the line from exhibition center to science center? It will go through a lot of building, or I don't know how it work. And then there's maybe some gas line or water pipe. They will like avoid them, or I don't know how it's work underneath. How do you guys find out? Check. And the other question is the noise and the air quality level. How loud and how the air quality is acceptable? How do you measure?
Okay, thank you for your question, Soon. We appreciate that. And I'm going to ask whoever's sharing the screen, please go to slide 10 for us. In the meantime, I'm going to just reiterate the question, and maybe I can have James's help. If not, someone from OTG can help me out with this. So there's threefold to this question. The first part of the question, I believe, was, will the subway tunneling happen underneath the building of 438 Richmond? We see Richmond Street here on the map, and 438 Richmond, according to this map, if it's to scale, it's not in the line, the path of the tunneling. And then the question also was about utilities. So James, perhaps you might have some information.
Thanks, Russ. Just to add to that, I'd say Ontario line is quite deep at this location. So we have a line that's kind of at the surface at Exhibition Station, and then we go underground through this part of the downtown, and we're quite deep. We're well below street level. And that's kind of to get to the right depth of avoiding utilities, and also to get us under, as we head, our next station east of here is at University, so that we're below that existing Line 1 TTC station. And the line will be constructed, so tunneled, and then also operated, surrounded by rock. So we don't anticipate any any perceptibility of the subway operating at nearby buildings in future. So very pleased to be bringing subway service to this community. With entrances on the northeast and the southwest corners of the intersection, but without impacting folks in those buildings. So this will be very deep and not really perceptible to folks in the neighborhood when we're into operations.
Thanks for that, James. Jackson has his hand raised. Jackson, would you be able to unmute your mic and ask your question?
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, early on in this year, I got a notice about expropriation being possible for some of the buildings or properties. And I'm just wondering whether that process is done already, because I haven't heard if there's any possibility of like some properties being taken for expropriation, or whether that's been completed or not. And I guess my second question is the construction. I'm not sure if you went over, but what are the hours of this construction happening? Will it be from like 8 to 5, or is it just weekdays? I'm sorry, I think I came in late, so
Hey, it's no problem at all, Jackson, and thank you for your question. So, just for the question about expropriation, I don't have any information to share back with you on expropriation, but I'm not exactly sure whether entire buildings will need to be expropriated in this area for the Ontario Line subway at this point. It's James. How about you?
Thanks. If I could just jump in. So, folks close to this station site who are seeing the work every day, we have our construction sites, right? So we have the heritage building facades retained in place wherever we could do that. Where needed, we've carefully disassembled, we've stored off site to enable our construction sites. But that construction area is above the surface. That's well defined, and our contractor OTG, who's also presenting tonight, is working within that area. In terms of property needs, there is some ongoing work around the subsurface, so that does remain in flight. But that's everything above the surface in this area is we have the property that we need to build the subway.
Thanks, James. And whoever's sharing the screen, I'm not sure who it is, but can you go to slide 16 for us, please? Thank you. Jackson, you'd asked a bit about the hours from excavation. So the south site, the excavation is going to begin roughly in August. The working hours will be weekdays from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., occasionally overnight and Saturday shifts, but we try to avoid those because we don't want to work on the weekends, and we want to respect the tenants who live in the area as well, because people don't want to be woken up from construction. On the north side as well, it's 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., occasionally overnight and Saturday shifts. A lot of the times the work hours are subject to change. They're weather dependent. Sometimes schedules change, but we'll be sure to communicate that with 2 weeks notice or more if we're able to, with residents in the area, so you're able to make adequate plans ahead of time should there be weekend work. Sophia, you have your hand raised. Please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to get some clarification in terms of like the acceptable level of dust. And other people brought up the same thing. You might be monitoring and you do have some mitigations in place, but every day there's like huge clouds of smoke. Sorry, not smoke, dust over both construction sites. Is there a process for us to start a petition or whatever to you to look for stronger mitigation measures? I know some places wrap construction sites in plastic, or well, not plastic, but tarp, just to keep the dust in and not have it go out. And because I see from the information you presented about dust excavations, you won't be using high cranes, so you will be able to wrap, or at least most of it wrap it. So I'm just wondering if there is a way for us to us, meaning the residents, to make our case that you need stronger dust suppression mitigation.
Hey, thank you so much for your question, Sophia, and it certainly is an important one. I'm going to ask my colleague behind the screen, please. Jennifer, can you go to slide 26 for us, please? There's a lot of good information here about dust, and Aga, I think maybe can we talk a little bit about the difference between the dust caused by piling versus some of the dust folks might see from excavation, and how effective some of these techniques are in suppressing the dust? Because the residents who I spoke to at the Morgan at 438 Richmond last week still experience a lot of dust coming into their windows. Now, I know a lot of these residents do face the construction site, and we do have a lot of these techniques in place, but is there anything more that can be done than what is currently being done?
Absolutely, Russ. So the difference is with piling works, we started piling in top level of soils, and there is a lot of loose, thin soils, and they are very easily disturbed. And then this is where dust coming from. And we started applying different techniques, different mitigations. So by now we know what works better, what really didn't work. We had our lesson learned. So going into excavation is a bit different scenario. You've got again first layer of some loose soil. So we are going to mitigate that much stronger with much more water suppression. Then going deeper, that ground is a bit more saturated, isn't so dusty. So we expect much less dust coming. At the same time, we as a OTG environmental team, we are working on a new strategy for the entire project. As I said, we had our lesson learned. We know what works, what isn't working so well. So we will be implementing that new strategy next couple of weeks. And we are also working closely with Metrolinx environmental team. We are on the same page to provide really effective solution that minimize impact to community. Let's be honest, we are here to deliver amazing project. At the same time, I'm here as environmental manager to act straight away when we have dust and talk to Sergio, talk to his team to assure that mitigation is in place immediately.
Yeah, if I may, I would like to add one thing. During the excavation or during the piling works, in the picture that you can see, all the equipment is working on the surface on top of a granular material. That when the equipment is moving, we try to apply water so they are not creating dust when they are moving. But in granular material, we cannot eliminate totally this issue. For the excavation works, all the area will be covered with asphalt. So all the trucks will be entering from the street to the construction site on top of an asphalt layer. This will minimize even more the risk of creating dust because the trucks will not drive on top of granular material or dirt or rock, right?
All right. Thank you both, Aga and Sergio. I want to go to the chat, and I do see some questions in the chat. And one of the questions here just popped up. It says, the Northeast site at King Bathurst will be contained within a covering. Why can't the same be done at Queen Spadina, please? Heather Jordan asked this question. The covering is essentially an acoustic shelter that will be built over the excavation site. And the difference between the two sites is that the work hours are different. So because King Bathurst will have different work hours, sometimes overnight, I think most of the time overnight, that this acoustic shelter is there to prevent some of that noise disrupting tenants overnight. Whereas here at Queen Spadina, the work is expected to be done later in the evening. So the need for an acoustic shelter isn't there as well. Aga, could you speak a little bit more about the need for an acoustic shelter, what purpose it serves, and why there's one not going to Queen Spadina? Did I get that right?
Yeah, absolutely, Ross. So with Queen Spadina south shaft, we have very limited space in there, as you can imagine. So trying to fit all machinery and trucks collecting the muck. Even for safety purposes, we wouldn't be able to construct a acoustic shelter in there. With King Bathurst, the site is much more spacious, so we have opportunity to install that that shelter at King Bathurst.
Thank you for that, Aga. And I do see another hand up. I want to give folks an opportunity to speak. And Bruce, we haven't heard from you yet. So Bruce, please go ahead, unmute your mic and ask your question.
Hi there. I'm the general manager of the Horseshoe Tavern. And obviously I'm right on top of the northeast corner.
Yeah.
My biggest concern right now, and I've already felt it, is the vibration from the drilling of the piles. And at times of the day or night, really, when we're trying to do our normal business of live music, it becomes very disturbing to have the whole building shake like a leaf. I assume that's only going to get worse when they start digging downward, 40 meters. Is that the case, or is there any sort of buddy watching how much movement this whole thing's going to be causing?
No, that's a great question, Bruce. And I'm going to go to Sergio. So, Sergio, essentially, this is a music venue very close to the northeast site, Queen Bathurst. And Bruce is asking whether it's going to be the same disruption, the vibrations, as there currently was during piling. Once piling is done, is it still going to be shaking the nearby businesses? And will it get any better? The more that excavation is done as it goes deeper underground, will it still be shaking the earth?
Yeah, so as I explained before during the presentation, the first 80 meters of material that is excavated is very soft material. It's clays, sand. This is very easily excavated, and we don't need hammers or heavy equipment to excavate these materials. And this activity is not creating a lot of vibration. So we don't expect to exceed the limits of vibration that are normal for the regular activities. As we go down below 80 meters, we are far from the surface, so we don't expect that the vibration that is created when we excavate the rock is affecting the buildings in the surface. And those shafts are going up to 40 meters from the street level. And as we go down, the feeling of the vibration of this activity is less and less. No? For the excavation of the tunnel is going to be excavated with TBMs, tunnel boring machines, and those machines will not be creating vibration on the surface. So,
thanks. So, Bruce, in a nutshell, essentially, it's not that you won't notice that it's there, but it should be to some degree a bit less impactful than what the piling is as you've experienced. Now, in the beginning, it might not be the case, or as they go through bedrock, but as the excavator goes deeper and deeper underground, it should hopefully, in essence, be a little bit less noticeable. We also do have vibration monitors in place, and Aga, maybe you can speak a little bit about how those vibration monitors work.
Yes. So vibration monitors, they are very sensitive devices. So any vibrations that can go into high level, acceptable level, and when they go beyond, then we would receive an alert. And then we can act straight away. So actually, for Queen Spadina site, we have so minimum vibration, we don't pick up any on our alerts. What you may experience is probably personal perception, which us as human beings, everyone is more sensitive than other person to vibration. So we have to remember about that. But otherwise, we measure life. If we experience higher than expected vibrations, we can act straight away.
Great. Thank you so much. And Jennifer, can you take us to slide 31, please? 31, please. And I hope that answers your question. I think Bruce, who had just asked that question, I know you are in contact with our team, and I know this is a concern, and it's something that we do want to continue to have a conversation with you about. There's 2 minutes left, so I want to give Josh the opportunity to ask the last question. So Josh, go ahead.
Hi there, thanks. I had sort of a double-barreled one. I was just wondering, the experience so far with the construction on the weekends, I've noticed, and I don't know, I'm not sure if there might be a reason for this, that the noise has been worse in the earlier hours, like perhaps the first couple of hours. And I'm wondering if there's anything that might be done going forward, if there is noisier work that needs to be done, if it could be moved more toward the middle of the day. That could be an option, just because it does impact people's sleep, which is difficult. And the second part, I'm just wondering, about any learnings from the Crosstown experience, which you might be integrating here to help smooth things along for residents, if you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, Josh, that's a really good question. I'm happy you asked about the early noise. And this was also explained to me a few days ago. And the reason why the noise was earlier in the mornings is because when the piling is happening, the piling has to begin early in the day, because the construction crews cannot do half a pile and then restart it the next day. They have to complete the pile for the day. And so say if they started by noon or 10 o'clock and they didn't complete the piles required for the day, then they couldn't stop. They'd have to stop early because they couldn't finish the entire pile for the day. So they had to start at the required start time. Now, luckily, the piles are nearly finished at this site. So when excavation does begin, it's going to be more of a consistent noise, if you will, but it's not going to be that really jarring, loud noise where you hear that really clanging and the back and forth that is caused by the piling rig. There is going to still be noise and disruption in some cases, but it's not going to be that really ear pulsing noise that we hear when we walk by the intersection in some cases. I know we're at time, but I want to quickly address your question about Eglinton. So yeah, there's certainly a ton of lessons we have learned about Eglinton. And James here, I see you've gone on camera. James, would you like to take this one? I'm also happy to take this one.
Oh, Ross, go for it. You know me. I'll chime in if I feel a burning desire to chime in.
Certainly. Okay. Well, let me give it a shot. So, Josh, one of the things about Eglinton versus the Ontario line is, Eglinton is a project where we mostly use a cut and cover method, and we closed the entire Eglinton Road. One of the lessons learned was, how that impacted residents and traffic and, local businesses in the area by closing such a major artery in the city. With the Ontario Line project, the construction is happening within the contained property in which the stations are being built, and they're using a different type of method, in most cases called sequential excavation methods. So this means that we aren't going to have to close major portions of streets in order to get the project built. Now, I know in some cases on the Ontario Line, we do have to close the street. Like you'll probably notice on Queen Street, right down the road from you, we have closed a portion of it on the Eaton Center. And then again, in Queen Street East, we have closed temporarily at some points. We are closing it as well in some areas. But for the most part, I think this is one of the biggest lessons learned, is that we can't close an entire major artery downtown because of the negative impact it does have on surrounding businesses and residents. Another really interesting thing about the Ontario Line is that it's divided up into several different contracts. So OTG, Ontario Transit Group, who's on the call today, is responsible only for the southern alignment of the Ontario Line, whereas we have different contracts for the bridge building contracts over the Lower Don or the Don Valley Parkway or the Don Valley. And there's another contract for the Northern Alignment. And I think by dividing up these contracts, they're able to continue work if one contract is behind schedule, for example, in other areas of the Ontario line. James, how did I do?
That was great, Ross. Thanks. You're challenging me to chime in here, which I will do. Just to add what Ross has said, you know, or to echo that, our contracting approach has been quite different for Ontario Line, and so we've had so-called early and advanced works ongoing for the past several years at around Queen Station, at Exhibition, in the East End, and also in terms of a different contracting approach, we have procured the vehicles for Ontario Line, the system that will run Ontario Line. So we'll be having fully automated trains, using kind of the latest technology, and also our operations and maintenance services for Ontario Line. That's all with another contractor, our rolling stock systems operations and maintenance contractor, Connect 6, who's also on board, just like OTG, working very, very hard to move all of that forward. So, we have our construction works ongoing now, but we also have a contractor working in a very focused way on our trains and our future operations and maintenance approach. And so we have that end game in mind for the 2031 opening day, and we have a team working on that right now. So that's another difference I think is worth just highlighting for folks.
Great. Thank you so much for that explanation, James. And folks, I know we have gone over our meeting time. It's 8:04, so I just want to share this screen that we have here right now. There's other opportunities that you can get in touch with us. I know we didn't get to everybody's question today, but it doesn't mean that this is the only time for you to ask your question. We are available to you, whether it's via email here at ontarioline@metrolinx.com. We have a newsletter and we have a telephone number here, and we encourage you to email us the questions that you didn't have answered today, or what you might have questions that you'd like answered at another day. So please email us. And I also wanted to mention that if you live in this area, if you live at Queen Spadina and you want to participate in these conversations more, we do have an active committee called a Construction Liaison Committee. This is where active members, including the BIA and the elected officials and local businesses, participate in conversations just like we're having tonight once a month. And if this is something that you're interested in, if you consider yourself a voice for your condo building, or if you're a part of a condo board in this area, but if you're disrupted by the construction, this is a really great opportunity for you to have a direct line of communication with folks like James or Sergio or Aga or myself to express those concerns and how we can mitigate some of the issues that you see, because you know your community better than any of us because you live there. So again, if you're interested in joining the CLC for Queen Spadina, please email the Ontario Line email here at metrolinx.com, and we'll be in touch with you. Next slide, Jennifer. And again, we are here for you. Please email the Ontario Line, as I just mentioned. Next slide, please. The next slide, please. And I just wanted to end it here. This is where we want to be. And I know that construction is disruptive, but this is the end goal here. And at the end of the day, in 2031, when we have a transit line that can take you from point A to point B so seamlessly, this is what you'll see here out of our front door. And I really want to encourage people to remember that the end product is, something to be excited about. And it can be tough during construction sometimes to be excited about it, but this is not very far away. 6 years from now is far. To some people it is, but really I think that this project here is going to be incredible. And this station here is something to remind yourself that's coming to your neighborhood. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you everybody so much. Have a great evening. Bye.